Alright, Chapter 3. Delia. I'm weird. Everyone says so. I suppose it's because while other 15-year-olds are talking about the best lip gloss or which movie star is hotter, I would rather be curled up with a book. Seriously, have you been to high school lately? Why would anyone sane interact with Cro-Magnon hockey players? Or run the gauntlet of mean girls who lounge against the lockers like the fashion police, making judgment on my faded high-top sneakers and thrift store sweaters. Actually, this is but our shoes are from the thrift store. No thanks. I'd much rather pretend I'm somewhere else, and at any time I open the page of a book, that happens. My mom worries about me because I'm a loner. But that's not entirely true. My best friend, Jules, totally gets me. It's my mom's fault she can't see past the safety pins Jules sticks through her ears and her pink mohawk. The cool thing about hanging out with Jules, though, is that when I'm with her, nobody even looks twice at me. Who wouldn't want a pink mohawk? Whatever, Mom. Jules understands my fixation on books. She feels the same way about B horror movies. She knows every single line of dialogue in The Blob. She refers to the popular kids in our school as pod people. Jules and I are not popular. In fact, I am pretty much banned from ever being popular, or in that manner, within 100 feet of anyone popular. Last year, when we were playing softball in gym, I swung the bat and broke the left knee of Allie McAndrews, the head cheerleader. Allie had to stay off the top of the pyramid for 6 weeks and accept her prom queen crown in crutches. Whatever, screw Allie McAndrews. She deserved it. I saw her picking her nose the other day in the bathroom. I was like, gross. The worst part was I completely missed the ball. Anyone who didn't hate me before the injury suddenly had a reason to ignore me or sneer at me or slam me against the locker when we passed in the halls, except Jules, who moved here a week after it happened. When I told her I had a social pariah, she laughed. Too bad you didn't break them both. Jules and I have no secrets. I know that she is addicted to soap operas, and she knows my mother's a cleaning lady. There's only one thing I haven't told Jules, and that's the fact that for the past week, the reason I've avoided her is that I'm embarrassed about my choice in reading material. A fairy tale written for elementary school kids. If you thought social suicide to literally bring the head cheerleader to her knees, you should try reading a children's book in plain sight in a high school. If you read Dostoevsky, you're weird but smart. If you read comic books, you're weird but hip. If you read a fairy tale, you're just a dork. With 4 eyes and 6 legs and snot coming from your fingertips. I discovered this story a month ago when I was eating lunch quietly in the school library. There I sat, chewing on a peanut butter and fluff sandwich. They're also called fluffers, just to tell you. Peanut butter and marshmallow. Yep. When I noticed that one book on the shelf was upside down and backwards, as if it had been jammed in. Figuring I could help Miss Weeks, the librarian, I went to fix it, and got an enormous electric shock on the tip of my fingers. The book was tattered and the spine shaky. I would have thought that by now I would have made its way to the annual sale, where you could buy old novels for $0.10 each. It was illustrated, clearly a fairy tale, but it was shelved in the non-fiction books about World War I. And the strangest of all, it didn't have a barcode to be seen. Mrs. Winks, I said, have you ever read this one? Oh, long ago, she told me, but it's actually quite special. The author hand-painted the pictures and had it bound. It must be worth a fortune! Not so much, Miss Weeks said. The writer was known for her murder mysteries. This was more of an experiment for her, a prototype that was never evolved. In fact, she never wrote another book after this one. I was a big fan of her other novels, and couldn't pass this up when I found it in a rummage sale. I love rummage sales. Oh, I also got these earrings at thrift store. So, for a nickel, it became the property of the school. I looked down at the cover. Between the Lines by Jessamine Jacobs. I checked it out that first day, and while I was in Earth Science class, I hid the fairy tale inside my textbook and read it from cover to cover. It's about a prince. Oh, look at the princess sending us nice winds, who has been taken hostage by the evil... Wait, back up a second. The wind. Oliver. Wait, it's about a prince, Oliver, who takes hostage... Oh no! Okay, third time. It's about a prince, Oliver, who goes on a quest to rescue a princess who's been taken hostage by the evil Raspuclio. The problem is that Oliver, unlike most fairy princes, isn't a big fan of taking risks. His father died in a battle. And as far as he was concerned, it's better to be safe than sorry. I think that's what made me keep reading. The very first thing you learn about Oliver is that it isn't easy growing up without a dad. It was as if the words had been taken straight from my mouth. My father had... Oh, there's a spider on my book. You know, that's what happens in fall. Maybe it's his father reincarnated. Why don't you get off? See? We try to, like, be nice to everything. Even Raspuclio. Yeah. I think that's what kept me reading. The very first thing you learn about Oliver is that it isn't easy growing up without a dad. I already said that. It was as if the words had been taken straight out of my mouth. I said that too. My father had not died in a battle, but he left my mother when I was 10 years old and found himself a new, improved family. She cried every night that year. And I was a straight-A student, not because I loved school, but because I wanted to be one more person who didn't disappoint my mother. We had to move to a small house, and my mom had to work hard cleaning the homes of girls who treated me like pond scum. True confession time. Oliver is the cutest guy is cuter than any guy in my school. Granted, he is two-dimensional and illustrated. Don't judge me. Go take a look at Wolverine in an X-Men comic and tell me he isn't hot. Or the guy that plays him right now. Whoa, Hugh Jackman, come on. With his jet black hair and pale eyes, it seems that Oliver is smiling up from the page directly at me. Clearly, any normal girl would take this as a sign that she needs to get out more. But me, I don't have any place to get to. Plus, he's smart. He conquers one obstacle after another, not with his sword, but with his cleverness. For boy crazy mermaids, take that as an example. When he is captive by a trio of creepy boy crazy mermaids, he promises to get them dates in return for a pack of supplies, flotsam and jetsam that had washed into the ocean after shipwrecks. He uses that junk, other people's garbage, to rescue himself from the snares of the fiery dragon that had killed his own father. He's not your typical prince. More like a square peg in a round hole, kind of like me. He's the sort of guy who wouldn't mind reading side by side on a date. And he knows how to kiss, unlike Leonard Uberhardt, who practically tried to swallow me whole behind the jungle gym in 7th grade. Don't eat me! I'm a vegetarian! I thought you were too! You said so in Vegetarian Club! That first week, I read the book so often that I memorized the words. I knew the layout of the pictures on the pages. I dreamed that I was being chased by Raspuclio or forced by Cabin Crowd to walk the plank. Da 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 da! And it wasn't, each day I'd bring the book back to the library because that was the school policy. I'd have to wait until it was returned to the shelf a day later, giving someone else a chance to read it. But what other ninth grader cares about fairy tales? The book was always waiting for me, so I could check it out again and reconfirm my position as public loser number one. Number one, number one, number one, number one. My mother was worried. Why was a girl like me, who could easily read 1,000-page adult novels, obsessed with a children's book? I knew the answer to that. Not that I was about to admit it to anyone. Prince Oliver understood me better than anyone else in the whole entire world. True, I never met him. And true, he was a fictional character, but he was also what people needed him to be. A dashing hero, an articulate peacemaker, a cunning escape artist. Then again, Prince Oliver had never existed anywhere but on a page, and in some random author's brain. He didn't know what it was like to be stuffed into a locker by the cheerleading squad and left there until some janitor heard me yelling. The janitor's really creepy too. He has this really long beard that he sometimes dyes pink and then green and then leaves it to gray. I don't get it. Today I decided as I wake up and stare at the ceiling, it is going to be different. First thing, I am going to return the book to the library. In my English journal, I'll write down that I've been reading The Hunger Games for my outside reading requirement, like 98% of the 9th grade. And I'll explain why I am Team PETA instead of Team Gale. I'll tell Jules that we should go to the Rocky Horror Marathon at the cheap movie theater this weekend. Around here it's the Crest. I don't know about you, where your cheap movie theater is. Then, in Earth Science, I'll finally get enough courage to walk up to Zach, my vegan lab partner. See, he's vegan, not a vegetarian like that other guy, Leonard Uberhart, who insisted on feeding tofu crumbles to the class Venus flytrap, and who probably will save all the whales before he turns 21. Yes, today is the day that everything is going to change. I get up, I take a shower, and get dressed. But the fairy tale is sitting on my nightstand where I left it before I went to bed. This must be what an addict feels like. I think, trying to fight the pull of one last quick read. My fingers itch towards the bindings, and finally, with a sigh of relief, I just grab the book and open it, hungrily reading the story. But this time, something feels wrong. It's like an itch between my eyebrows. You know, I often have an itch between my eyebrows. Like sometimes I wake up in the night, just, God, what is that? I wrinkle in my mind. Frowning, I scan through the dialogue, which is all the way it should be. I glance at the illustrations, the prince sitting on a throne, his dog waiting beside him. Delia, my mother yells, I told you twice already, you're gonna be late! You've read that book 1,000 times. You know how it is. Now means now. I flip the book through to the final page. When I see it, I can't believe I haven't noticed it before. Just to the left of the Princess Seraphima's glittering gown, drawn in the sand, is a grid, sort of like a bingo chart or a chessboard. How strange, I say softly. That was never here before. Delia Eve! When my mother uses my middle name, it means she's really angry. I close the book and tuck it in between my backpack, then hurry downstairs to scarf down breakfast before I'm dropped off at school. My mother is already rinsing her coffee cup as I grab a slice of toast and butter it with all natural butter, Whole Foods. Mom, I asked, have you ever read a book and had it change? She looked over her shoulder. Well, sure. Wait, is that a free book? No. Well, sure. The first time I read Gone with the Wind and Brett walked out on Scarlet, I was 15 and thought all that unrequited love was wildly romantic. The second time I read it last summer, I thought she was a silly, selfish pig. Oink, oink, oink. That's not what I mean. That's you changing it, not the book. I take a bite of my toast and wash it down with orange juice. Imagine that you've read a story 100 times and it always takes place on a ship. And then one day you read it and it's set in the wild, wild west instead. Oh, look at a horse! That's ridiculous, my mother replies. Books don't change in front of your eyes. Mine did, I say. She turns and looks at me, head tilted as if she's trying to figure out if I'm lying, crazy, or false. You need to get more sleep, Delia, she announces. Mom, I'm serious! You simply saw something that you overlooked before, my mother says. She put on her jacket. Let's go! But it's not something I overlooked. I know it. The whole way to school, my backpack sits in my lap. My mother and I talk about things that don't matter. What time she is coming home from work, if I'm ready for my algebra test, if it's going to snow, snowballs, snowmen, snow angels, who has time for it? When all I can focus on is that faint little chessboard, scratched in the sand of the beach on the last page of the fairy tale. Our car pulls up in front of the building. Scared! Have a good day, my mother says, and I kiss her. Goodbye. I hurried past the kid who plugged into his earphones and the popular girls who clustered together like grapes. Honestly, do you ever see just one of them? The school's current it couple is Brianna and Angelo, or Briangelo, as they're known, are wrapped up in each other's arms across my locker. I'm gonna miss you. I'm gonna miss you too, baby. For Pete's sake, it's not like she's leaving on a trip around the world. She's only heading to freaking homeroom. I don't realize I've said that loud until they're both staring at me. Get a life. Angelo says, at least a boyfriend. They leave with their arms wrapped around each other, hands tucked in each other's rear butt cheeks. The worst part is, it's true. I wouldn't know what true love is. Feels like it hit me in between the eyes. I guess that would finally relieve that scratch in the middle of my eyebrows. Given my mother's experience with romance, I shouldn't even care. But there's a part of me that wonders what it would be like to be the most important person to someone else. To always feel like you were missing a piece of yourself when he wasn't near you. I have one of those. The thing's gone. She's really cute. There's a crash on the metal outside of the locker beside mine, and I look up to see Jules smacking her hand against mine to get some attention. Hey, Jules says, Eartha Delia! Today she's dressed in black veil and a mini skirt over leggings that seem like they've been hacked with a razor. She's like a corpse bride. Where did you go last night? I sent you 1,000 texts. I hesitate. I've hidden my fairy tale obsession from Jules, but if anyone is going to believe when I say that a book changed before my eyes, it's going to be my best friend. Sorry, I say. I went to bed early. Well, the texts were all about Soy Boy. I blush. At 3 a.m. during a last sleepover, I confessed to her that I thought Zach from Earth Science class was possibly future boyfriend material. I heard that he hooked up with Mallory Wegman last weekend. Mallory Wegman had hooked up with so many guys in our class that her nickname was Fisherman. Hook and sinker. I let the news settle, and the fact that I had thought about Zach this morning before reading my book, which seemed like 1,000 years ago. He's telling everyone she slipped him a real burger instead of a veggie one, and it overloaded his system, that he has no recollection of doing anything with her. That's really scientifical. Proven. Scientifically proven. Must have been some really good beef, I murmur. For a second, I tried to mourn Zach, my potential crush, who now is someone real. But all I'm thinking of is Oliver. I have to tell you something, I confess. Jules looks at me seriously, suddenly. I was reading this book, and it sort of changed. I totally understand, Jules says. The first time I saw Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, I knew my life was never going to be the same. I had a crush on the red one. No, it's not that I've changed. It's the book that has changed. I reach into my back pocket and grab the fairy tale, flipping it directly to the last page. Look! Prince? Yup, standing right where he usually is. Princess? Ditto. Frump? Wagging happily. Me, 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 me. Chessboard? It's missing. It was there less than a half an hour ago, and suddenly it's gone? Delia? Jules asked, are you okay? I can feel myself breaking out into cold sweat. I close the book, and then open it again, blink flash to clear my eyes, and to try to get that dang scratch from between my eyebrows. Nothing. I stuffed the book into my backpack again and closed my locker. I have to go, I say to Jules, shoving past her as the bell rings. Just so you know, I never lie. I never cut class. I am, in short, the perfect student. Which makes what I'm about to do even more shocking. I turn in the opposite direction and walk towards the gymnasium. Although I'm supposed to be in homework. Whatever, I'm a rebel. Rebel, yeah. Me, Delia McBee. Delia? I look up to see the principal standing in front of me. Shouldn't you be in homeroom? He smiles at me. He doesn't expect me to be cutting class either. He hasn't heard my latest song. Miss Winks asked me to get a book from the gym teacher. Oh! Excellent! He waves me on. For a moment, I just stare at him. Is it really this easy to become someone I'm not? Then I break into a run. I'd run the marathon. I'd run the whole entire world. I don't stop until I reach the locker room. I know it will be empty because this early in the morning, sitting down at a bench, I take the book out of my backpack and open it again. Real fairy tales are not for the faint-hearted. In them, children get eaten by wolves and chased by wolves and witches and eaten by all of them. Women fall into comas and are tortured by evil relatives. Somehow, all that pain and suffering is worthwhile, though, because when it goes to the end, it's happily ever after. Suddenly, it no longer matters if you got a B- on your midterm with French, au revoir, consent, bien, or if you're the only girl in school who doesn't have a date for the spring formal. Happily ever after trumps everything. But what if ever after could change? I did it for my mom. At one point, she loved my dad. Or they wouldn't have gotten married. But now she doesn't even want to speak to him when he calls on my birthday and Christmas. Likewise, what, he doesn't call on Easter or Labor Day? What about St. Patrick's Day? I mean, there are a lot of good holidays, you know. Likewise, maybe the fairy tale isn't accurate. Maybe the last line shouldn't read something like, what you see isn't always what you get. But there is still no chessboard in the stand. I start flipping through the pages furiously. In most of them, Prince Oliver is in the company of someone or something. His dog, the villain Raspuglio, Princess Seraphina, but there's one illustration where he is all alone. Actually, it's my favorite. He comes towards the end of the story, after he's outsmarted the dragon Pyro and left the beast in the care of Captain Crede and the pirates. Afterwards, as the pirate loads the dragon onto the ship, Oliver is left alone on the shore, looking up the cliff wall tower where Seraphina is being imprisoned. In the picture on page 43, he starts to climb. I lift the book closer so that I can see Oliver more clearly. He is drawn in color, his jet black hair ruffled by the breeze. His arms straining as he scales a sheer rock face. His bottle green velvet tunic is tattered, singed from Pyro's fiery breath, torn from his escape from shackles in the pirate ship. Oh no! His dagger is clenched between his teeth so that he can grasp the animal leg. His face turned towards the ocean, where the ship sips in the silent distance. I think the reason I love this illustration so much is the expression on his face. You'd expect, at that moment, he'd be overcome by fierce determination, or maybe by shining love to his nearby princess. But instead, he looks, well, like something's missing. Like he'd almost rather be on that pirate ship, or anywhere than where he is, on the face of a rocky cliff. Like there's something he's hiding. I lean forward until my nose nearly touches the page. Hopefully I don't have any boogers. The image blurs as I get close, but for a moment I'm positive that Oliver's eyes have flickered away from the ocean towards me. I wish you were real, I whisper. On the loudspeaker in the locker room, the bell rings. Ding, 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 ding. That means homeroom is over, and I have to go to algebra. With a sigh, I let the fairy tale sit down on the bench. Still cracked open, I unzip my backpack, then pick it up again. I guess! Oliver is climbing the sheer rock wall, but the dagger is clenched. That was clenched in his teeth is now in his right hand, sealed to stone. Its sharp tip scratches the faintest of white lines in the dark granite, and then another, and then a third. H, I rub my eyes. This is not a Nook, a Kindle Fire, or an iPad. Just a very ordinary old book. No animation, no bells and whistles. Drawing my breath, I touch the paper. That very spot, and I lift my finger again. 2 words slowly appear on the surface of the rock wall. Help me. Okay. Wait for the next chapter. Au revoir.